Hello, can you hear me? So they asked me to challenge your thinking, which in the Silicon Valley means be critical. So let's be honest. There's a new way of doing HR, and the question is, will you adopt it and move with it? So the topic today is, how does HR increase corporate revenue or growth? So 4 topics. In the future of HR, there'll essentially be 4 opportunities. You can be data-driven, you can support innovation, you can support with technology, or you can have a business impact. And my message to you is, if you don't do one of those 4 things, you will not have a job in HR. It's changing that dramatically. And I've been in HR for literally 40 years. It's the biggest change ever. So let's see how that goes. How do we show the economic contribution of innovation? How do we show that it makes a difference? How do you increase innovation? And how do you increase innovators, but also those that support them? So let's start with, if you do a survey of CEOs and you ask them what's their biggest problem, what do you think they say? Not HR problem, but business problem. So you might say customer service, you might say innovation, you might say other things. But it turns out we're the biggest problem. Now you might say, well, we're at the top of the list, but we've been at the top of the list for 5 years in a row. The biggest problem. So to me, that means we need to change. We don't want to be at the top of this list. We want to be the top of the list where the performance is greatest. All right, so the first thing I want you to do is make your executives aware of the value of innovation. Most of the world has spent its time being efficient and productive. People came in early, worked hard, stayed late. But now if you come in late and you invent an iPhone, it's just better. It makes more money. So innovation is essentially replacing the focus. Now, we still want productivity, but it's not number one. So who is the world's most innovative firm? You got to work with me here. Is it Nokia? The Crazy Birds? The Angry Birds. So there's a list by the Boston Consulting Group. So Apple is the most innovative firm, but there's Tesla, there's Microsoft. So if you look at this list, the one thing they have in common is that all except the 2 in black are West Coast American firms. Something about the water. But look at Facebook. It's 13 years old. You have children older than Facebook, and it's an innovative firm. But then there's Toyota, it's been around for 100 years, and it's innovative. So here's a list of the most valuable firms in the world. Do you see any similarities? Well, CEOs do. And the similarity is continuous serial innovation, not one time, continuous innovation. And that innovation is so strong, it disrupts the market. So if you remember before there were mobile phones, someone came along and said, why do phones have wires? That would be disruption. And disruption means that you can't sell that old product. Nobody wants it. And so we're in the world where the most innovative firms are also the most valuable. Clear? And now you're going to say, well, we're in Finland. We don't innovate the same way. But it turns out the market just doesn't care. If you have a credit card and you're a bank and it's got a higher interest rate or worse service, people around the world don't care that you were in the sauna. They want the best. All right? Now, since revenue growth is our target, do the firms that are the most innovative produce more revenue? And if so, how much? So here's an example. The average in this industry, average firm produces 180,000 euro. Now, if you paid someone 50,000 euros, they gave you 180 back. That's pretty good, isn't it? Drug dealing doesn't have an ROI like this. So IBM is not as good. It's 14% below, and it wasn't on the innovative list. But these next 5 are. Look at the difference. So Amazon produces double the average. Microsoft 3 times, Google 9 times, and Facebook, 13-year-old firm, produces 9.25 times the average. So what that means is that Facebook could produce the same value with 8 times fewer employees than IBM. Now you have to be asking yourself, what do they do to those employees? They come in and give them a pill? What is it? This is amazing productivity because of innovation. All right, how do you know the importance for individuals? So is an innovative more valuable than an average employee? And if so, how much? So here's a quote from a CEO. Secret to my success is that we've gone to exceptional lengths to hire the best. And when you're in a field where the dynamic range is 25 to 1, in other words, 25 times more productivity than the average worker, wow, what a great, does that pay off? Anybody who said that? Steve Jobs. Now, Google did the same calculation, and it turned out at Google, it's 300 times, not 25 times. So you see why we look for innovators? To see why they're so valuable. Because they make us a lot of money. Are they nice people? Do they bathe? Do they have neck tattoos? Because innovative people dress and act differently. But they come up with iPhones. All right, next. We've learned you have to convert what people do into euros in your case. So you can say my turnover rate is 16%, but it's not the same as saying 2.5 million euros went out the front door and they went to a competitor. So if I took $2 million worth of computers out your front door, wouldn't someone stop me? But what if when 2 million goes out the door as employees? And what if half of that was preventable? Do you know that half of all turnover is preventable? Next, what if your cost per hire was 2,000 euros higher, but they produced hundreds of thousands more? And last, you need to know that a weak hire can damage the firm up to 10 times the salary, yearly salary. All right, how can you increase innovation? That's a great question. Here are the key factors for increasing innovation. So this is from Google. They have a formula. Everything's data. Everything's an algorithm. How do you increase innovation? Discovery, which is code for learning. Collaboration, which is code for meeting people in the hallway and discussing what you're working on. And fun is meeting people in a bowling alley or a movie theater on campus and discussing it. So innovation is pretty simple. People who bump into each other, and I say, what are you working on? And you say this, and they go, well, I'm working on this. The embarrassment of being behind causes people to stay up, to stay current. So those that learn quickly, those that collaborate, that's how you create innovation. So we're talking about learning. One of the things you probably don't measure is that in a fast-changing world, whatever you know today, so if I came back next year and gave this presentation, it would be a lot different. And so what you've got to realize is that the number one predictor of success at Google is learning ability. Do you learn quickly? Anybody here learn really quickly? Come on. It's so shy. By the way, Google, everyone would have raised their hand. So this is amazing, but it turns out the fact you went to school that got good grades, we used to use that for years. We don't use that anymore. Nobody cares. Do you keep learning? Are you on the leading edge? It's also the number one thing at Tesla and among college hires learning ability is the top thing we're looking for. So you probably don't measure it, but you need to. How fast will you learn? Because whatever we know now will change. All right. This is a scene from Google. People are waiting in line for food. You've done that before. But the key thing is, what if you wait in line too short? What if the wait is too short? What will happen? Well, the answer is when you're in line and you're waiting, you talk to people and say, what are you working on? What are you working on? And they go, I'm working on this. And again, the pressure of you're not working on something really hot is embarrassing. So at Google, the VP's job is to measure the length of the line. And if the line's too short, he gets into trouble. That make sense? Because you want to stand in line. If it's too long, they'll walk away. So it's 3 to 4 minutes, not very much. But collaboration is really powerful. Next, you probably don't have one of these at your company. Anybody have a laundromat at their company? You're so last year. I thought everyone had one. Facebook has one, Google has one. Why? Because you meet people, and this is an underwear laundry. This is not dry cleaning. So when you're talking over your laundry, guess what? You reveal yourself into what you're working on and what you're innovating. Don't believe me, huh? How about a bowling alley? Come on, at most companies, you say, I'm going to take an hour off and go bowling, you'd be fired. But it turns out when you're having fun in bowling, you collaborate and share ideas. Now, I know this isn't true. Does your boss pay you to take a nap? So this is what they call the Decompression Chamber. It takes away all sight and sound, and you can literally go there and sleep. Google is the only place that has an aquarium room where you can think. So what is the value of thinking? It turns out more than working hard. Once in a while, just stop and say, can I prevent these fires? This is crazy. So Google has 20% time, but it actually has a nap room, literally a nap room, like you have for your kids, they have for their employees. And then Facebook has what's called Maker's Time. So Maker's Time is if you're a writer or you create something, it turns out you can't create after you come out of a meeting. You need what's called ramp-up time. So they give you on Wednesday, no one's allowed to hold a meeting of any kind so that you can invent. Now that might be a good idea, no meeting any day, but it turns out if you really want people to invent, you just tell them there's nothing scheduled today. Any questions? All right, how do you make people more innovative? So first of all, you have to make it part of the responsibility of HR to encourage disruption, make it a daily habit. So what is disruption? What a dumb way to do things. There's got to be a better way. Next, serendipitous discussions. Serendipitous is not planned. So collaboration is not teammates who see each other all the time. It's people that don't see each other all the time. HR running into finance, finance running into engineering. So you purposely increase these meetings. Reward risk-taking. So there's some people that take a little baby risk. HR, by the way, if you make a list of functions that are high risk takers, we're at the bottom with accounting and legal. We're not crazy people. Raise your hand if you are. All right, rapid learning I mentioned, but also from failures. So they have a phrase at Facebook, move fast and break things. So it's not, actually they don't want you to break things, but when you move fast, you have to spill some wine. If you're a waiter and you carry wine and run, you're going to spill it. But the secret is to learn quickly. So make failures, but learn quickly. Celebrate innovators, definitely make them heroes. Don't hire people. So I won't mention where. But I said, well, this is the way it needs to be done. And I said, well, you don't understand. We live in, and they said Finland. Does anybody care where you live when they're trying your product? You can say, well, it snowed or the weather was bad. But the answer is you can't make it an excuse if you're going to sell a product around the world. You have to be the best. And next, do hire people. So I learned this at HP. This younger person usually would walk in and say, how do you do this? And we would explain the HP way. And in a second, they would say, well, Granddad, what a dumb way to do thing. I would never do that. Now, most managers get upset. We hired them immediately. Because most things we do are kind of antiquated. So people that see things, we call them half broken, are actually a good thing, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I'll never do it that way. That's so last year. And then those people that get in the way, that slow things down, they just have to go to accounting or some other place. But they can't get in the way of innovation. All right, next, after serial innovators, what's the next most productive thing that HR does? What increases revenue the most? So here's a list of HR programs. Now, if I was going out hunting for a deer, would it make sense to know that a rubber band wouldn't do as good a job as a rock and a rifle would do better? You have to know what weapons have the most impact. So this is a test, challenge you. Of all of these, which one has the highest impact on revenue? Which one? Recruiting. You know that because? Are you in? Okay. So look at the number, though. It's 3.5 times increase in revenue if you're good at recruiting. And there's another page I didn't show you that some things like helping the aging workforce has a negative impact on revenue. So your job is to know which tools work the best. Now, every company is different, but I assure you some don't work. All right? Bad recruiting decreases revenues. So this is a quote from Google. They put in their annual financial report, if we don't attract excellent people, we won't be able to grow. You need to get your executives to put that in their financials. It makes a lot of difference. All right? So what percentage of new hires fail? So most companies don't measure failure rates of new hires. But what percentage would be a bad number? If you produce cars, what percentage if they failed and broke down would be bad? Come on, work with me here. Come on. 2%? 10%? Okay. Would 46% be a good one? How about executives? We do that better, right? 58%. And then when you ask managers, would you rehire that person that you hired? 39% say no, that was a mistake. So if you hire bad people that are not productive, they certainly won't make you revenue, but they will slow down innovation. All right? How do you attract innovators? How do you find innovators? Well, the first of all is referrals. So when you go to top performers, innovators, how do you find your job? 93% said, someone else referred me. So your referral program is the best way to find innovators because one innovator knows other innovators. So you should have about 50% of your hires coming from referrals, and all those from top performers, not from your worst employee. Hire faster. How long do you think a superstar hockey player or a superstar football player is available? So the average time to fill in the US is 30-something days. But how long before the innovators are gone? It's 10. So if you're hiring after 11 days, you're getting people that are not very good. You have to make your decision quick. Now, by the way, you need a pipeline so you can assess them slowly over time, but make the hiring decision relatively quickly. So have a pipeline. Managers have to be tolerant of people during the interview who will literally say, what a dumb way to do things. You have to train managers not to say, I'm not going to hire that brat. Executives calling makes all the difference. Having your executives call up innovators convinces them. Whiteboard problem solving, much better in an interview. Here's a current problem. You do half of it on the whiteboard and you have them solve the other half. Much more predictive than any interview. What's going to take to get you to say yes? So you ask them and they tell you, and once you know, then you can sculpt the job around that. And last, find their work. So with online, it's easy. Find their blog, find their work, find their ideas. The best way to find innovators. All right, next, they want to do the best work of their life. So if you ask innovators or top performers what they care about, this is the list they put. They don't put money. They want to work with great people. They want a great manager. They want freedom. So if you look at these things, chance to innovate, that's what they want. Not money, not benefits. They're going to get that, but they want to do the best work of their life. And actually, we have a measure. How many days during the last month, before you went to bed, did you say, can't wait to get to work tomorrow? Well, that's exciting work. And sometimes the answer is 0. But other people say 30 days. I really love to come to work. All right, there's also certain game changer competencies. So in addition to technical skill, you want to hire people with these competencies because they make innovation much easier. So leading edge learning, I mentioned, sense of urgency. There are people that say, I need to do this tomorrow. And there's people that say, well, what's the rush? Adaptability in a world that changes constantly. Some people can adapt. People at Apple are very adaptable. So something goes wrong, something shifts, they're ready for it. Embrace technology, strategic thinking, you got to think of the future. Self-motivated. I don't know why, when I used to work, I'm a professor and I don't really do very much, but I always hired people that were self-motivated. I don't have time to tell you what to do. I don't have time to motivate you. Get people that's like, slow down. And it turns out there are about 5% of the population that just do the work anyway. And disruptors, so I mentioned this before. So here's a glass that's half, what do you see, half empty, half full? So most people see it as half full because they're optimistic. You're optimistic, right? But there's others that see it as half empty, but you don't want those either. You want these people who see it as leaking. So think of it. Whatever it is, there's people that say, that chair will be obsolete. I will be obsolete. Why do I have to be here? Couldn't I be a hologram? Have you seen rock musicians have holograms on stage? It's a lot cheaper. Everything's obsolete. So if you see HR as fine, you're not going to be the people we need. But people look at everything, the lights, the music, the microphone, and say, that needs to get better. And then when you're interviewing people and they look around and they say, that could get better, hire them. All right, you also need to focus on certain jobs so that it turns out if you hire great people in sales jobs, they produce more revenue. Where you hire better janitors, they don't. So give up on equity, treating everyone fair. Which job matters? If this was football, doesn't a goalie matter more than the Gatorade guy? So learn to focus on these jobs. These jobs are secondary, but they have an impact. All right? We should also focus our resources. So that means putting our best people, our best dollars, recruiters, but also giving them priority. So if someone's an innovator and they're threatening to leave, you have to put focus on them. All right, almost done here. And one last thing. I need to warn you that there's a wave coming over the world, and I've mentioned in HR, but this is in business. AI is going, if you look at Amazon, Facebook, they're putting billions of dollars into AI or machine learning, which is just, you make a mistake, the machine learns faster. It sees errors and learns from them faster than humans do. If you're not populating your company with this, then the red birds, angry birds are going to get you. So if you forget everything I said, populate your company with AI people because they're relatively easy to find now, but pretty soon they'll be impossible. They'll be outrageously expensive. So I hope I made you think. Maybe a little nervous? All right, we have time for any questions, if you have any. Come on, I came a long way. Ask me tough questions. Thank you.